Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 creative coach, and I need a haircut. Well, if you are watching, then you probably can see that. If you're listening, well, now you know. But of course, I'm just kidding. Welcome to my vlog, where it is my pleasure and also mission to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaways, and overall just making your journey a little bit easier. Now, before I get into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, this past week, a lot of things kind of going on the surface, not as exciting, nothing like is complete in any way, shape, or form, but nonetheless, good progress, right? So one of the things that I've been doing is getting back into finding new literary agents that would be interested in my novel that I wrote. I had put that on pause a couple months ago simply because with the pandemic, I know a lot of literary agents really stopped taking submissions. They were more focused on the clients that they already had, as makes sense. And now some of them are starting to kind of open up their submission process. But what I found still was that most of them aren't. And it kind of makes sense. But so if you're a novelist without an agent at the moment, it is a little bit difficult, right? So you got to kind of really dig through and find ones that are taking submissions, ones that are a good fit for you. Of course, like all things, you should never just submit just because you see somebody is taking submissions. For me, I make sure they're taking a very, that they're interested in the things that I have to offer with the novel. So like a coming of age story being the primary one. But yeah, overall, it's kind of an interesting landscape, and certainly, to a degree, I'm kind of being patient with it because it is done, right? The novel has been proofread, revised, and so forth. I'm sure if an agent or an editor eventually were to go publish this, I'm sure they might have their own notes, but as far as I'm concerned, it is complete. And so now for me, it's just a matter of having the patience to ride this out and, allow it the opportunity to open up where people can read it and be like, okay, this would be great to put out there. And, if after a certain point that just doesn't end up happening just because of, the landscape, as well as, perhaps no agent will want to kind of represent it, right? Then no harm, no foul. I'll self-publish and do it that way. And that's not necessarily something bad, because a lot of successful authors do self-publish. Now, the traditional thing is they publish traditionally and then eventually they switch to self-publishing. But, even someone like as successful as Brene Brown, she talks about she could have filled a football stadium with all the rejection emails and letters that she got for her first book. So it's not uncommon, and it doesn't disparage me. It's just all par for the course. And kind of in that sense, I have to have the patience to kind of deal with it, right? With the circumstances as they are, because right now I'm not even necessarily getting rejections. No one's taking submissions. And, for the most part, right? I was able to find a few people that were taking submissions and submit to them. But it comes each week. I try to make a point to find, new people to submit to now that I'm back in the swing of it, so to speak. But so finding new people each week becomes a little bit harder and harder. So, I make it a point to find like 3 people. And, even into the second week of doing this, it's really difficult, right? You have to really look under every single rock and really, really dig. So, and yeah, tradition, like basically what's worked for me is, I'll type in like a couple of genres that my book falls under, and along with the word like literary agents or literary agents looking for, and then the genres, and there's websites like Manuscript Wishlist and things of that nature that are a good database. But after you've kind of exhausted those, like I said, you kind of have to look under various rocks and so forth. So that's that. The other major thing is continuing the visual effects work on my proof of concept for In Search of Sunrise. Things are moving in parallel, meaning I want to have the package material ready to go. So what does that mean? The script, the proof of concept, which is basically like a short film that represents the movie, the budget, the pitch deck, a poster, and all these different things, right? So the main component that right now takes a lot of my focus is the proof of concept. Not that I'm working on it necessarily every day, but with visual effects, I have to, we're kind of creating things from scratch, and so I have to be very detail oriented as far as everything. And so, shout out to my friend Jonathan Moulton, who kind of has helped me oversee a lot of this, and work with the other visual effects artist who's been doing the bulk of the work. And it's kind of, we had at the beginning of last week, we kind of came together, really talked about it. And one of the things, we kind of divided, because Jonathan's great with visual effects, and so we divided it in such a way where it would try to play to everyone's strength. So Jonathan took the 3D modeling work, and the visual effects artist, the other one, was tasked with kind of continuing putting the plates that Jonathan sent, in those shots, putting in a couple of effects that were more of his strength. And so things have kind of progressed. And in fact, today I got back the latest pass of things, and very promising, right? You're starting to, at least I am, see the light at the end of the tunnel. A couple tweaks here and there. So I just sent off an email with all the notes, and we're going to tackle it. The way I like to, at this point in the game, really work is take it note by note. So that way, it's like a checklist. Boom. Here's what we got. Okay, let's do this. Okay, let's tweak it. Boom. All right, great. That's done. Approved. Check it off the list. Let's move on to the next one. So I forgot to count exactly all the notes, but I think maybe somewhere between 10 and 12. Certainly between 10 and 15, no more than 15. And, obviously a note can be very intensive or it can be very simple. Some notes are very simple. Some notes are a little bit more intensive, but again, because we've done the bulk of the work, it's not as intensive as certainly as it would be in the beginning. So just a couple of tweaks here and there, but very excited because, like I said, the finish line is within distance. You can kind of see it, and it gives you a second wind, if you will. And I'm really amazed. One of the big things that we had to create a stage. Because of COVID protocol and things like that, I didn't want to. It seemed like a much bigger hassle to rent an auditorium and so forth. And so we shot against green screen, and we created this auditorium from scratch. And initially there was blue curtains and so forth and whatnot. But we changed up the color scheme, we changed up the paneling, and really gave it some depth and color. And now it really pops. And it's fun to see, with Jonathan, because he was doing the alterations for that, and then kind of working in the shots, right? So, you have this 3D model and you can go anywhere with it, but you have to align it so that way it matches the shots that were filmed against the green screen. And so it was cool. Jonathan called me and we kind of went through it, and, we were picking out the shots and so forth. And it just really is amazing. The only downside is, when this is done, I want to kind of share the green screen version. I want to kind of show the various drafts in iteration, so you kind of see how it all came together. But I didn't film on a Zoom call. I think it would have been really cool to see, have an inside look of like what Jonathan was able to do and how we were sort of doing it. Because yeah, I mean, for me, obviously, I'm well aware of this stuff on other movies, but I've never done it myself, and so to really dive into this world and play with it has been really fun and great to learn all these new things. That's part of why I did this, so that way, hey, I can kind of learn the process in a microcosm, and then, if and when it comes time to making the movie, then obviously I have, I've banged my head against the wall at certain points and know what works and what doesn't. So the process for the feature film could be smoother, right? That's the ultimate goal of this. So that's exciting. My guess, I mean, probably like mid-March is when all this stuff will be complete with the music, the sound design and sound mix. It still does, once the visual effects are done, then it has to go into color correction, so that remains. So there's a couple of things, still left to do, but aiming for mid-March and whatnot, and then how we'll kind of release this to the world, because I do want to kind of showcase it and show it off, but we'll come up with a plan for that as well. So that's that. Now, as far as, right, I mentioned I'm working on parallel tracks with creating packaging material for the rest of it. And if you've been following me, you know that like I've been putting together this pitch deck. Now, I have the contents of the pitch deck basically complete, but I don't have the visual aspect. And, I kind of put a pause on things of doing the pitch deck until I got the poster right. Because the poster is kind of sets the tone. The poster would be the cover page of this. And then once you go inside, everything has a similar color scheme, type font, and so forth. So, I had kind of a couple of designs that came back, and I talked a little bit about this, but I think it's worthwhile to reiterate. I got good feedback from people, but I sent like 10 options. And it's kind of funny when you have like no feedback, everything's even, right? There's no delta in your graph of like, which one's preferable, which one's not. Well, even if you get like, for me, like 30, 40 responses, what ended up happening was that just everything raised, right? So you have 10 options, and you just kind of divide that evenly across all of them, and it's like, okay. So there was no real clear-cut winner, or even like an inkling of a preference, right? There was no delta to drive this information. So it was one of those moments, where I think in the end, you have to take a shot yourself, right? And you really have to, only you can do it. I'm one of those people that loves collaboration. I really value input, and I think, the people that I work with, I'm lucky enough that they do have great opinions, and that's why I love working with them, is because they give good feedback and creative input. But, in this instance, there was just no common consensus, and, ultimately it had to be what I would envision. And so, I had to kind of take that shot on myself, and, I was speaking with somebody that's close to me, and they're like, I have a sort of background in this, and the interesting part is like I also was tapping to professional movie posters designers into this, and ultimately even them, like, no disrespect, but it just wasn't quite, like I said, ultimately I had to be the one to decide what is the right approach and how should it look and so forth. And so, I kind of went out of, even though I sent 10 options to the test group, what I ultimately went with was a slight combination of a couple, but something different and that wasn't included in the list of options, and that was good. I mean, I think it's just in the end, right? There has to be someone that calls the shot and has to like be willing to fall on the sword. And, art at the end of the day is a matter of preference. And, like all things, it's never going to appeal to everybody. But, that's why for me, it's like at the end of the day, if I'm the one spending so much time on it, I obviously want people to love it and see it. But what excites me? And so that is how, I kind of went about the poster. And now that the poster's done, we can start to create the visual aspects of the pitch deck, right? Since we have the content, now it's just, you copy and paste that content in, make sure it's in the right type font, formatting, layout, and so forth, right? So that's the exciting part for me. I'm excited to get into that. Interestingly enough, one of the other aspects I was kind of working on was just the text, because meaning the text for the proof of concept. So, think of it like a short film. Obviously, it's not the film, so I wouldn't want to title it In Search of Sunrise because, I don't know, I feel like it's something different, right? So I wouldn't call it In Search of Sunrise proof of concept. And the reason for that is because within the 3-minute piece, you don't really get why would it ever be called In Search of Sunrise, this little short film. And even though it's not a standalone short film, because it does, represent the movie in and of its own. So I've been kind of thinking of like, what would I title this if it was just a standalone short film? And then, how do you sort of describe it, right? You want to kind of allude to what this is, but hint at the other stuff. So, think of it like a YouTube title and a YouTube description. Like, what would that be like? And it's been interesting. Obviously I have a synopsis for the movie as a whole because of the pitch deck and so forth. But, how do you kind of present this to the world? That just this, this 3-minute piece, right? So that's been an interesting question to ponder. I don't have all the answers yet, but I'm kind of thinking about it. So that's kind of going to be the next phase of it. And, like all things, you want to just pay attention to detail. And so really, for me, considering this is an exciting aspect of it, right? The other thing, so John Comfort, who's an amazing script doctor, continues to polish up the script. And what he's really doing is just fine-tuning dialogue, cutting certain things that don't need to be, clarifying certain things that might have been a little bit confusing, and just in general, making the script flow a little bit better in terms of its prose, right? Even just like the action lines themselves, so that way it flows a little bit better for when, 'cause the script is ultimately a blueprint for a movie, but nonetheless, in order to get that movie made, people have to enjoy reading it. And so John's very strong at that. So it's not, for the most part, it's not like he's necessarily changing the intent and so forth, but like I said, clarifying things and just making it flow in terms of a script better, right? So that's been exciting. That's on par to go towards completion. The other aspect, right, of all this is the budget. And, it's kind of funny to me because ultimately, I've been talking with my friend Ian Kaiser, and he said, his main thing is like, start to budget out in terms of how much you would really need. And I kind of laugh with him because I'm like, at the end of the day, it's all arbitrary. It's like almost like stock prices. It's like made up numbers. Not entirely, but it's like, if let's say someone gives you a $500,000 budget to make a movie, then you start to think of, how do I creatively solve for these things, and how do I bring to light this movie under this budgetary constraint versus, someone who has 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, I don't know, right? But at the end of the day, like, you hear this all the time on behind the scenes features, like even a $200 million movie, they themselves always feel like they never have enough and they have to problem solve it just as well. And so that idea, like, it applies to everyone, no matter how much money you have. And, I look at myself as someone who is a great problem solver. And so for me, it is a matter of, okay, well, if this is what we got, well, how do we work within that and get it done for what we have and figure it out, right? So that's kind of how I look at things. But in this sense, I'm working with my friend Courtney Stewart to really budget things out and really just kind of not necessarily padding. Listen, again, you can make this movie for $20 million. You can make this movie for $40 million and things like that. And, well, who knows? But, I'm kind of going for, with her, a number that makes sense for us, where it gives us good padding, is not ridiculous, but certainly doesn't restrict us, And if we get it, we get it. If we get a little bit less, we'll work with less, If we get more, then great, Ultimately, we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. It is funny to me, and I'm sure people that budget out movies, they must be pulling out their hair in terms of what I'm talking about. But I don't know. I have the sense that ultimately, like, all budgets are really kind of arbitrary. It's like, if these are your constraints, the same thing with like a startup of any kind. It's like, if this is what you got to work with, how do you make it work? Some things may take longer. You might have to be specific with the stuff that you want to really put the time and money into, that makes the most sense, versus the things that don't, So that's kind of how I approach it. And the other aspect, creatively, I'm gearing up to start doing some good, to work on the side with the Grammys. Again, as the Grammy Awards approach, they need graphics and editing and things of that nature. So looking forward to kind of doing that, and probably, like, I worked on award night with them, doing part of their digital team. So I think this year I'm going to get a chance to be on the team as well, which is going to be exciting. So looking forward to that. And I'll kind of keep you updated to the extent that I can as things develop. Anyway, that's what's been going on with me. And yeah, if you have any questions, as always, please ask away. Happy to answer anything, even if it's not something that I discussed specifically in this episode. And or feel free to share your thoughts, that too. Comment section, or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Both are viable options for you. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.